So Development Victoria undertakes quite a broad remit, to be honest, which is a really exciting position to be in. I think the first one on the left there is Docklands. We've just got our attendees covering it up, but yes, thank you. And I think that in itself is a fantastic example of a precinct that is undergoing constant renewal, which presents a lot of opportunities for us to explore what can be done, particularly at the end of life part of the equation. And as well as that, the opportunities that exist around connected precincts such as Fisherman's Bend and Arden, but also across our entire portfolio. We do a lot of residential development, so Habitas Aurora is an example of a project up in Epping, home to 7,000 residents. So a lot of new construction in particular, and I think the residential sector is actually one of the hardest to tackle. It is probably the least sophisticated, and it presents to us a lot of challenges, but also, you know, starting from that base, it's a huge amount of opportunity. And Melbourne Arts Precinct is probably one of our most prominent. It's a $1.7 billion precinct, but it has been quite exciting to explore what can be done with particularly demolishing buildings that are currently on the site that can't be repurposed due to their typology, age, etc., and what can be developed on that and that can set the example across the rest of the sector. Next slide, please. So we exist, our work profile essentially looks at 5 key pillars. Housing, which I mentioned, economic development, so all projects that we do serve to boost the Victorian construction sector or economy in general. Urban renewal, Docklands, Fisherman's Bend, great examples of that. Value capture and creation, and social and economic infrastructure. And as the sustainability team at Development Victoria, we actually work across all of those. So it's not about doing sustainability as well, it's about embedding and integrating that into the entire portfolio.
Next one?
Yes, please.
Yep.
Which is that? And next one, please. Our objectives are pretty clear, and it's really just to do things in a way that is really robust, that is repeatable, that's scalable, that benefits the sector. We hold ourselves accountable, as does the community, and government should be accountable. So we are set up in a way that we must meet community expectation. And I think that is starting to include, in a much, much more stringent way, strong sustainability outcomes. Next one, please. So our strategy is pretty simple, to be honest. It sits under 3 pillars. There is, of course, a wealth of details that sits under this. We deliver best practice, and what that looks like is highly contextual for the site. We have a carbon neutral by 2030 mandate. That includes scope 3 embodied emissions, and investing in transformation, which is looking at how we might use what we do and leverage what we do, and that's part of what we're talking about here today, to boost the sector, to transform the construction industry entirely. The next slide, please. Just wanted to give a bit of a snapshot of a couple of leading projects to give a flavour of what we've managed to achieve so far. Ballarat Gov Hub was completed in 2021, so quite a recent example. It's been certified 6-star Green Star Design and as-built off the back of a 5-star target, so a great story there. Quite a large regional catalyst project at $100 million. Sorry, completed 2020. Yes, that's right. And it pioneered CLT, at least in our portfolio, which dramatically reduced the embodied carbon. And there's just a couple of pictures, so flick to the next one, so we can sort of see both the scale. It's also really interesting to note, which is shown in this picture, that the building, so the office administration building, which is the nice shiny new one there, is actually an extension to the existing, I'm not even sure what era that building is on the left, but the little town hall you can see there poking out the side. So a nice example of refurbishment and renewal for Ballarat. And next slide, please. And you can see here, and quite nicely, the CLT in the new build. You know, it's both a beautiful building that's fantastic to be in, it has some biophilic properties, but it also has that dramatic carbon reduction. And the actual figure associated with that was 48% reduced embodied carbon in the base building. So that is a fantastic example. Next one, please. So I've just got the table shown there, but of course that's a lot of detail. Next slide, please. Another probably less glamorous example is an acoustic wall. So these are quite common. If you drive along freeways, you'll see these on residential developments, particularly in the urban growth area. This is a 1.6 kilometre acoustic wall, a really high proportion of recycled and recyclable plastic. So at the end of life, it will be able to go back into reuse again. And yeah, equivalent to, which is probably the most disturbing fact on that slide, 15,500 homes worth of annual plastic waste, being the 61 tonnes there. So there are small measures, even in the non-glamorous side of developing, that that can have quite dramatic impacts. And this is seeing some quite good press, I guess, in the civic infrastructure world, which I don't necessarily dabble in a whole lot. But next slide, please. So really what we're here to sort of talk about is why government should lead. And I haven't been in government that long, but I think that the opportunities that present themselves in government are quite dramatic. We do a lot of repeatable work. We're a regular client. So what we do, we can use to leverage future outcomes. We can send signals to market. We can take measures to harmonise the supply and demand. So we can get more involved than potentially your typical client would. We are a constant presence. So, prototypes aren't particularly helpful, particularly in the construction sector. Having beacons that get done once and, don't necessarily present examples that can be used by others can be a little bit unhelpful in terms of sustainability outcomes. You can see there's some figures around the GDP, the actual turnover for government procurement. That's on a global level. It's not so different in Australia. And subnational governments being responsible for half of this is a big number. And the number down the bottom there is the Victorian context. So $144 billion in the last financial year allocated to state capital projects. Next slide, please. However, there are some fairly significant barriers. And I would probably say working in the design and delivery side of things, that the main issue is data and data flow. So being able to find products, being able to know what the actual characteristics of products are. But then it's not necessarily about that specific product, it's about changing the system, about learning to do more with less, about learning to know what it is that we need to do, so sufficiency and efficiency. And then there's about doing things differently. And some of these barriers do work against us, but I think we're gradually working to overcome these. Next one, please. I think I'm nearly at the end. Yes. But I would say that probably one of my key takeaways from working in government for just a short time is that there is a huge amount of ambition. Government isn't a barrier. Government is willing to do things differently and change the way that we do things, and to help industry to do the same. So yeah, reach out if there's any opportunities.